Hey, Alex. Hey, Corey.
Hey.
Well, I am so excited to talk about, how to have these AI conversations with the board and how to, kind of work on building that consensus and that understanding that I think is so important for these projects and these initiatives and investments to be successful. But Corey, because I assume as CTO of Locality Bank, you're a little bit of also like a technologist, maybe a hint of a futurist. What is one task you wish you could outsource to AI, but you can't?
What's funny is you say futurist. My wife calls me a BS artist. That's more on that side. But the one thing, it's a good question. The one thing I would love to task AI with, and the thing that we can't, right, is fixing the data side of this, right? Like if I could just get AI to go through all these various silos and all this crazy systems of data that we have and just say, hey, listen, I would love to create a loan AI agent. Can you just fix all the data so that would work properly? That would be like the magic simple button for me. But I don't know that the regulators nor my CISOs would probably look at that as a good move. So I'm going to say I can't do that just yet.
Alex, what about you?
Every time I think about this, it's AI is so good at synthesizing and executing things that have like known parameters. To Corey's point, the data has to be good in for it to like generate something out. And every strategic communications document that I've ever written, I've like fed through AI just to see if it can help me. And it always comes back as like, no, it can refine, but your ideas have to go in first. And it's humbling, but I kind of love it at the same time.
I have been moving and packing, and there's actually many, many tasks that I wish I could outsource to AI. I wish I could outsource to really anyone but me do this task. But there was I used an apartment broker to find my apartment, and I felt like really good about that choice. And I was thinking like, what did this human do for me that I felt like AI really couldn't? And one thing about apartments is in like a really perfect world, like in a world where like airline ticket prices, it's really easy to compare airline ticket prices, really easy to compare routes, really easy to compare time in the sky. Apartments do not want to be like that. They do not want to be airline tickets. And so this guy had to listen to all my preferences. And because I work from home, I was like, I need a good work from home, like 1 bedroom. And he had to look at all the floor plans of all the places with all the pricing parameters. And then because the pricing is non-standardized, he had to standardize the pricing for me and then showed me everything. And then he booked my tours. And then like what was nice is at the tour, I like completely forgot to do this, but he took like video of all of the apartments. And I was like, wow, like I'm sure like an AI like could have done parts of this, but I felt like because he kind of both had a lot of knowledge of the apartments and like he was really good at understanding and listening to what my preferences were. And because he sees a lot of apartments, he knew like what would a good setup be or not. But like, it was just really interesting because I was like, oh, like this is not, maybe his job will go away in the future, but a lot of other things are going to happen for him to not have to have value to me.
Yeah, I don't think the job goes away, right? I think if he does it right, then he can really magnify all of those things that you really liked about working with him.
Yeah.
But with AI doing a lot of the heavy lifting, so he could do it for more people, right?
Sure. I think he needs to make a formula where he like that standardized. We can't be doing, there's a lot of spreadsheets involved. So I feel like if a spreadsheet is involved, AI could get involved somehow, but there was a lot of listening and interpretation.
Look, I think AI can replace him, right? I think they can replace a lot of people.
So
you can probably replace me. But I think it's scary if it does.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that say about us, right? If we allow that to happen.
I liked this guy, so I don't want AI to replace him, and I'm going to text him about how much I appreciated his services at the end. Because all of that
got a shout out on the podcast,
right? Also, having built my second, we'll talk about this, but having built my second brain, I had to really hold my Claude's hand to like approve everything, and I cannot be sitting at the computer hitting allow once that many times when it comes to an apartment search. So
there you go.
we're never touring an apartment if I have to hit allow once that many times. Okay, so Corey, we are here to, again, talk about you, your bank, and your bank's board. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Locality Bank?
Yeah, we are Locality Bank is a new bank. We started as a de novo back in January of 2022. So we're roughly 4.5, going on 5 years old.
Congrats.
As a bank. Thank you. Exited de novo back at the 3-year mark. So that was cool to know that the minimum required point of time that you had to be going through de novo, we did that, and they just let us go for it, which means we were doing a pretty good job at what we were supposed to be doing as a bank for the regulators and everyone to feel comfortable to do that. But we're focused on commercial business, right? Local businesses that operate inside of our communities, inside of our home cities. And so for us, that's Fort Lauderdale today, mostly Broward County, Palm Beach counties, as well as Miami-Dade counties in South Florida. However, the thesis in building the bank was to kind of create a community bank blueprint. What we knew was, starting a bank in 2022 is very different than if we'd started the bank, 10, 15 years before that. Obviously, with a lot of the technology aspects of it, that was a big consideration. But the big thing for us was how much banking has become commoditized and how much technology is further commoditizing that element of the business, which is to probably hurts community banks in a way, right? Because we're not as big, we don't generate as much money, so we don't have as much standing power or money to invest in technology growth, and so we didn't want community banks to go away. If Portland's going to stay weird and Austin's going to stay cool and Miami's going to be Miami, all these cities, we know that it needs local entrepreneurs, local business owners that are driving that, and not just large corporations and companies. And so therefore community banks need to exist. So that was the thesis, is we wanted to create a bank that actually was meaningful, that actually help serve business owners, but also help shape the way banks maybe talk about using tech in the future if we could be successful. So that was kind of cool. Me personally, I've been in banking for over 20 years. I was the CTO at another community bank that turned larger regional bank, turned IPO, public bank, to which then that probably stressed my little tech brain out a little bit too much on the public side. So I decided to go start my own bank. But prior to that, I was
way less stressful.
Way less stressful. No, but for someone like me, though, like I'm a builder, right? It really is less stressful to go just build something from scratch that can fail than to rely on like a stock price ticker somewhere, right, to tell me whether I'm doing successfully or not. But prior to that, I was in the military. I was in the Air Force as an enlisted guy for 6 years, and I was an infrastructure nerd. I built cybersecurity networks for the Pentagon, Arlington National Cemetery, the Air Force Academy, and a number of other institutions. So I'm an infrastructure nerd. So AI is right in my wheelhouse.
One of the things I think is most interesting about Locality is I think, kind of natural advantage of being a new bank. I know that being a de novo carries with it a lot of costs and a lot of disadvantages. You don't have that legacy and historic profitability, but you get to fresh start, like blank canvas, pick the tech that you would want to use for the next 20 years, not tech that you have to keep using because you've had it for 20 years.
Right.
So what has Locality's approach been to technology, and specifically AI, and how has that kind of changed over time, either with the bank's growth and de novo status, or with the development of AI, it's the technology available to enterprises?
It's funny. I get asked this question a lot, or not asked. I don't get asked the question, but I get kind of told like, "Oh, you're so lucky, right? Because you get to have all the coolest stuff because you're a new bank, right? From people like you." But that's not necessarily true, because if you're starting a de novo bank, you only have a finite amount of capital to invest in things. Like, sure, we could have went and raised a couple $100 million, built our own core system, and really started to kind of do things. But then it would have took us like 3 to 5 years to get out to market, and the investors really didn't want to see that, right? When we were putting a bank out, first question they asked is, why the hell do we need another bank? So then as we explained it, they were on board, but then they were like, can we get this thing out to market like as fast as we can for the minimum amount of money, but really kind of build a foundation to go do all these things that we want to do in the future. And so that shifted the way that we designed the bank. And so yes and no, there's some advantages there. But what I'll say is one of the best advantages we had, we didn't know we needed at the time. Because if you rewind back to 2021, 2022, AI wasn't as prominent in the conversations as it is today, right? It's accelerated its growth and its impact so much and so fast over the last couple of years. But in building the bank from the ground up, we didn't have legacy mindsets. We didn't have legacy process and procedure. And so our organization has been able to embrace some of the movement here a little bit faster, at least from concept, right? So like our chief compliance officer isn't as stressed out about the usage of AI as someone who's been around for 20, plus years inside of the same company. So that's been easy. But the conversation we've had about AI from the beginning to now is entirely different, right? And I would say that the first conversations we were having about it were completely wrong. It was the same conversation that most people are having right now, which is, I can't wait to give an agent to my customers so they can self-service even better. And now it's more shaped around how we are using AI to take all these amazing people we've been able to recruit. Like, I feel like we have nothing but A players at Locality Bank because we've been able to hand select everyone. And each one of those people that were willing to take a risk to come to a new bank, that's a different personality altogether.
Right.
So we have amazing people. And so now we're like, how do we take this really, really cool tool and leverage that in a way that our business line experts can be more efficient, more effective, and take more control and be greater at the things they're great at and do less of the things that they're miserable doing, right? And so that's been really, really fun. But the conversation internally has been interesting because it started with, okay, how do I use AI every single day?
Yeah.
Right? To talk to customers, to now, how are we using AI to just get our day started and prioritize things and get things across the finish line? And that's been a really cool shift for me because as a builder, I've never seen bankers talk this way. And so that's been real fun for me.
It is so fun to see that. I think what you're talking to there, Corey, is this constraint piece that has always been present in community banking and is present right at the size bank that you guys are at as well. But it's a really good example of, hey, we have some amazing people and we only have so many hours in the day, so many people to do that work. And then somehow under constraint, we have to grow. And so how can we leverage technology to do that? And although it is hard, and I agree, it is not the easy way to some extent because you guys are younger as a bank and because you didn't bring that legacy mindset, you can essentially use that constraint as a very creative thing. Like, we only have this much time and these many people. Right. What can we do to supersize that impact and kind of empower them with the tools to do 10x more or 10x more meaningful or valuable, work that an agent cannot do?
100%. Now, the big thing, right? My job, right, as one of the co-founders and as an executive in the company is sitting at the table with the rest of my executives and making sure we don't burn these people out, right? Because they all have day jobs and then we're asking them to help build, which is entirely different from what they've ever done. That is mentally stressful for some people. And so it's a balance for sure.
So it sounds like Locality doesn't have agents to help customers self-service. So how are you guys using AI if I don't have my self-service agent?
Yeah. So the self-service agent, I'm not saying that they're not going to have a place, right? But when I hear anyone, and I'll start with everyone and then I'll come back to us, right?
Yeah.
It's like when I'm sitting at a conference or coming off stage from talking about something or just talking to people in LinkedIn, I hear so many bank CEOs and executives talk about these agents, right? These chatbots and how these customers get it. And what I always tell them is, listen, those are going to get built, right? The big banks, the technology companies, the fintechs, the software providers. I mean, you look at Parlay and stuff that Alex has been doing. They're doing a lot of really good work in developing some of this customer-facing agentic AI capabilities, right?
Yeah.
If I, as the bank, am also doing that exact same thing with the same focus and investment, I'm just chasing parity that I can't meet, right? Because even if I get even on par with everybody else, I don't have the spend to be able to make this thing the same thing that they're going to make it. So I think it's silly for me to think that spending my money there makes a lot of sense, right? And so on the Locality side, we took that in-house. We said, okay, if that's the case, how do we really create value? Well, first, we need to make sure that we could secure this thing and that we can create something that our entire team can see that's visible and they can use. So it couldn't be, just focused on deposit ops or just focused on ACH and wire or whatever. So we built the framework internally and then the infrastructure in our cloud environment to secure this agent that would basically just look at our internal policies, procedures, and documentation that we have that. So think that little flip book that people used to have in the branch to tell them how to do procedures and things like that. And we just gave them an agent so they can ask, like, how do I open a bank account? Or what's the policy on this? Or, hey, I need to revise this policy for, this month's board meeting. So, hey, can you look at this policy and recommend, any changes that have happened over the last, 365 days that may strengthen it? And so we pushed that out, and that was kind of like this nice little softball. But it got everyone using it. And then it started to create this, query system where it's like, hey, well, if we have it for this, can it do this? And that's where it became really fun.
Yes.
So right now what we're doing is we're working with our credit team and our underwriting team to look at how do we take loan documentation in for specific loan types and say, all right, let's review this loan doc. Let's create a report. Let's look for abnormalities. Let's look for inconsistencies. Look for all these things that our physical people were doing every single time a loan package came through. And what we found was that if we just made some simple changes to the process to introduce AI there, we could save 1 to 3 days of time per loan.
Amazing.
Now, when you think about that, it's like, oh, well, 1 to 3 days, it's not that big of a deal, right? It is, right? If you're a bank and you look at operation, but from a customer side or getting a loan out, maybe it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But when you think about the workload that can come in and the chaos that gets created inside of a bank, from various loans, either flooding in or not flooding in at any given point in time, those 1 to 3 days, when you actually measure it across all these different loan types, can literally save weeks or months in the speed in which we get loans funded. So we're actually bringing that live fully tomorrow. And so I'm very, very excited to get that piece out. So MVP 1 will be out tomorrow. We'll have MVP 2 out by the end of the month. And then that'll save the full 3 days. And then we already have a line of people asking for the next agent build. But we're being really focused and very considerate with the way that we use it today.
I love, Corey, the call out there, efficiency for sure, right? How can we make sure that throughput on a loan and time spent touching a loan is reduced? For sure, right? Like that is how the bank makes money. The faster we can lend, the more we can lend, the better we can do all of that. But one thing that you and Matt Michaelis, who is our last guest, said, both of you keyed in on how agents could help with oversight and like risk management around lending faster. Yeah. And I think that is just so interesting that both of you are thinking with that kind of surgical lens of like, okay, well, it has to be efficient, but also it has to be prudent. And we're going to prioritize that combo with a strong emphasis on like risk management too.
Yeah. And the reason why we specifically picked this one was because we wanted to find a process or procedure in which we could introduce this AI agent in a way that didn't really shift or change the way we look at, escalations or rules. And so as a bank, we very often, when we look at technology, we want to go rewrite everything for it because it's technology, right? I got to create this whole new rule for an AI agent to do this job. And that's not the case here, right? The way we look at this, like we've had junior underwriters in banking for decades. And we have escalations, right? So if a junior underwriter can do so much work and then it reaches a point where they're beyond their thresholds or permittable stuff, and then we escalate. And so that's the way we're looking at it. It's like, let's not look at this as technology, but let's look at this in the same way that we're already doing things. Let's just introduce something that can speed it up a little bit. And so that's where that one really found a niche for us. And we also know that that's something that's very specific to the way that we handle loans and underwriting and credit. And so we felt really, really good about investing our time to go build it because it was unique to us.
Well, so all banks have boards, and the board is really important for providing oversight. They're your if your boss is the CEO, they're the CEO's boss, right? And regulators want boards to help hold accountability. And so I was wondering, how did Locality identify and assemble its board of directors, especially thinking about what your mission was, what your objective was, how it's 2021. And then, I want to talk a little bit about how you guys communicate at the board level when it comes to technology and strategy.
Yeah. Our board was put together very deliberately.
Okay.
Right. And probably like most de novos, you're going to include some investors, right, and key people. But for us, we wanted to be very specific. We wanted to build a board of local operators and leaders that had really deep roots, not only in our markets, but in a number of different industries that could give us some perspective. So we have attorneys, we have real estate developers, we have a gambit of retirees who have run major corporations and bank investors, and that was really important for us, right? Because we wanted people who understood our space enough to give us guidance, but also had some expertise that we could kind of carry with us a little bit as well. And that's done us extremely well because the conversations we have are very different. Like we kick off every single board meeting with, real quick updates from Keith, my co-founder and our CEO to the board, just so he knows where we are. And then we turn it over to them and say, all right, tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think? What's top of mind? It doesn't have to do with anything with banking. It's just, what is top of mind to you? Is it hotel, room rates are going down because they can't fill the rooms because of, travel isn't the same? Or, is it affordable housing? Like, what is it that's bothering you or stressing you out when you turn on the news or whatever in the morning? And that's super helpful for us to start looking at the way we grow the bank.
Do you have like any technologists on your board, or is that just you?
We do. So we have technologists of sorts. But Kelsey Weaver, who is a bank director, and yes, Kelsey's an amazing connector of people.
We never overlap, but we have crossed paths since then. Yeah,
legendary. Yeah,
connector of people like none other, and but she just knows so many people, and she really has her head down in this space with fintech and everything. And so she's really helpful for me as the nerd right in the room to talk about some of these things.
Yeah,
she's my champion in the corner sometimes.
Nice.
And then how does the board get involved with technology decisions? What do those conversations look like? And then like how much do they want to keep being involved after maybe saying yes or no to something?
They don't really want to be as involved, nor do we want them to be as involved in the decision of technology, right? But what we want is their advice on some of the things we're looking at and how we apply it to the business. And we want the tough questions about like, hey, we're investing this amount of money. Well, what's the return going to be? We want them to poke holes in that so that we can go back and look at it. But at the end of the day, it's our job to run the board and the board not to run us, because we have to run the company, right? And it's our decisions to make. And our board really doesn't want to change that, right? They really want to be just good resources for us without really telling us what to do. However, when we start to introduce some of these usage and stuff, they have some really good questions, right? Like we're looking to create this tech entity off of our subsidiary of our holding company, and just focusing on the industry and the things that we want to do. The questions they have in my timeline delayed me.
Yes.
But in reality,
correct.
Good questions there. Yeah.
But in reality, they're strengthening it. And so when we get up and running with this thing, it's going to be more successful than it would have been if they would have just, rubber stamped it, or they would have just asked the technology questions, because our board is so focused on the business questions and less about the technology.
Which is ideally the way that people think about AI, to be honest. Like AI, I think of as one of many tech components in a suite of technology that can be leveraged for business growth. But you happen to be someone who's highly technical. So you're probably in the deepest of weeds, and then you have to convey the highest of kind of strategic objectives back to your board. So how do you manage or balance that?
Oh my goodness. This is like the hardest thing in my life is just speaking to people sometimes, because I get I get really excited about some of these things, and I want to share everything, and sometimes you can give too much information, right? So I've had to like dial that back. I have a long list of people who help recommend or advise me on how to adjust the way I talk and what I say and how I present things, even when I don't ask them. I don't even have to ask. They still just give me the information. But it's been kind of like taking like what I'm going to say, run it by a few people, especially if it's really important, like a new business strategy or a really huge investment that we're going to do, and run it by them what I'm going to say. Now, I'm not a scripted person, right? Most people know that about me. I will not read from the script. I hate that stuff. And so that gets me in trouble. But one of the ways I've found that is super helpful for me is I'll just type out what I'm wanting to say. Literally, I'll just start talking and typing at the same time, like out loud, like a weirdo in my office. Like my family's probably trying to figure out what I'm doing or who I'm talking to. Literally myself. But then I take that and I drop that into ChatGPT or Claude and I tell it to make a version for dummies. Now, I'm not calling my board dummies. I'm not calling anyone that I'm talking to dummies. But it helps dilute it down, right, to the very bare basics in a way that everyone can understand. And then I just program that in my mind when I try to go into the conversations.
Sure.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
That's awesome.
Alex, I had a question for you. I know we're here interviewing Corey, but you likely also either speak to a board member in kind of an official capacity, maybe in a consulting capacity. You may also speak to executives within an institution who then have to deliver your message to the board. What has your experience been with maybe that's different than how Corey ends up speaking to his board? If we assume maybe Corey is and Locality has the most ideal sets of conversations and the ideal, the coaching through ChatGPT so he can explain it to everyone.
Yes. So I do have a board of my own, some bank tech folks on it, kind of Kelsey style, who, have seen a wide kind of set of banks and how they should operate, and have also seen a wide set of fintechs that work with banks. And then I usually get rolled in to come chat with the executive team at banks who are saying, ooh, we want to figure out how to use AI. And I will say
so many boards. Yeah.
It's a lot of boards. It's really fun. And sometimes I have to be the bad guy and be like, listen, the potential on the table here is unlimited. Never before has it been easier to automate, delegate, make more efficient, 10x, maybe 100x increase throughput. But you can't just launch AI at stuff without a problem you're trying to solve associated. One of my pet peeves is this classic habit that I've seen at a couple of banks recently, and I apologize, Corey, if you've done this too. Just this Alex's hot takes, take it for what it is. But this whole we've decided to provision AI to everyone. You're expected to use it, and then you just leave people, with and people who know what their job is, then find themselves thinking, okay, well, I don't know what I'm expected to do with this, and then it ends up being not super ROI heavy, or you got some folks who lean in and then they use it a lot, and then they run into a spend limit and they can't actually figure it out. And so what I always advise is, what is a business problem or a business strategic objective that you are trying to achieve? Are you trying to grow loans? Are you trying to grow deposits? Are you trying to enter a new market? Whatever it is, there is an application, hypothetically, of AI to support that. But you can't just solution with tech and then expect the business strategy to materialize, because it won't.
Yeah.
Get off
So
my
I will say,
soapbox.
no, stay on that soapbox, because I will say we actually resemble that sometimes, right?
Okay.
So Copilot, right? We just licensed the entire bank for Copilot to use with Outlook and everything like that. But then we know, to your point, what's it going to do? And so what we've done is we've created a meeting every single Friday morning that kicks off. It's 30 minutes long. And it used to be a timekeeping thing. How do you manage your time? How do you stay on top of things? And it's transitioned to now, how do we use AI? And it's a place for them to just ask questions and for us to give them guidance on security and all these other things. And we're trying to create the right conversations around it. But you're spot on, because it doesn't work, right? You give it to them, you have these tools, and it really just creates more cost and usually more problems.
If it's tied to an objective, it's always been really people get really excited, but I think if you just kind of yeet it and then try and retrofit a strategic objective, it's harder. But on that, I guess, Corey, when you think about all of this work that you have underway, all of these use cases that you're super excited about, what business challenges are you excited to take on now with AI, and how do you communicate that stuff to your board? What's an example maybe of a conversation around that you've had recently?
Well, think about this AI agent we're rolling out, right? Underwriting and loan, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited about just the opportunity we get to do that, because in the past, right, before AI has gotten to where it was now, these processes and the way that we do business in this area in particular was too labor intensive to fix, right? And what I mean by labor intensive is, okay, we want to fix this thing, so we want to speed it up, we want to be able to process more loans or whatever. What do? You hire more people. Right. Well, that's not a great strategy necessarily. So now that it doesn't require more analysts or more people, and I just get to use these A players that we have inside of our company, it's like game on, right? Like that's why I'm excited about it. Because, if it's anything that's going to get me motivated, there's got to be something that centers around value creation. Right. And so as I look at this and why it excites me is because my value creation in this is growth for the bank, growth for my customers, growth for my team, in a way that we've never been able to do that before. And so I am super amped about that. And so, I know a lot of people get excited about, AI is going to create this moat, for my company, because everyone talks about moats, right? I'm going to build a business. I'm going to create this agent. It's going to be proprietary. And now I'm going to run the world, right? But I thought it was cool. I was reading this or listening to this Anthropic post on LinkedIn, and I very seldom listen to a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. But this guy, Kazoo, he's a co-founder and CTO at GenSpark. He basically said that, everyone's talking about moats these days and have been for a while. He believes that moats don't exist anymore because everything is moving too fast. He said the only real moat in the world anymore is culture. And I was like, holy moly. Hot take. And then I thought that made me stay up at night. Like I was waking up at 2 a.m. thinking about that, because he is so right. And that's what I'm excited about, right? Is the fact that I know we have a good culture. We have really good employees. And so I think we can win with AI. And whereas if I didn't feel like I had the right people or the right culture, I'd be scared. And so I thought it was interesting. So now I've shifted to a lot of my conversations of telling bank executives is if you don't have the right culture around how you're going to use this, don't start.
Yeah. Having described this use case about the agents that can help underwriters, decision loans faster and cut it down by 1 to 3 days, which is amazing. How have you guys prioritized projects or, said a different way? How do you kind of manage some of these trade-offs that you have to make and kind of what, it sounds like at the beginning you wanted something that would work for the entire company, but now obviously this agent is really for a very specific part of the bank, very specific employees within that part of the bank.
Right. Yeah. So the all company agent was more to get the security and stuff right. It was to dial in and test on something that didn't have customer information or any PII or never touched anything remotely PII. And still today, we're not really looking at any major PII or anything like that in the process. We will eventually, but we'll work with our regulators and the processes and everything to validate that before we do it. So that was the reason for the all company thing. It was really just to get it out there, get some tests, but get some excitement around it. Let them see that it's possible. This thing's real. Like try to get them to try to name it or something, right? So they can come back with ideas. Now it's really looking at the strategy of the business. Like, how are we looking to grow Locality Bank? And if we're going to do that successfully, where are the areas that we would need to hire more people or do more work? And if so, then you look at those people and say, are they at capacity? And I'll tell you, my team works 100% of the time. I don't have any people that are just skating through work at all. Like that's so much stresses me out because I'm like, geez, they've got to be exhausted some days, right?
Yeah.
Like, work and stuff we give them. But how do we kind of create a release valve for that? And that's how we prioritize projects: is where are the areas of release that we need the most, and how does that impact the strategy of the business to grow? And then we prioritize that way.
Alex, what do you tell different, maybe prospects or clients about prioritization and trade-offs and kind of how to, I kind of think that's like the stuff of life, is that when we choose one thing, we have to give up other things, and we should really, really be excited about that choice. But what do you tell
It basically comes down to a couple of parameters. So one, I love Corey's point about release valves. If you're starting with a very precise pain point in a process, for example, maybe you have a workflow that you're trying to get some release valves around. If you are successful, then that bottleneck is going to shift either downstream, either upstream, somewhere, but there's going to be another one, right? And so there's also this recognition of, okay, we're going to pick the highest pain point. And then if we unlock it, there's going to be a next highest pain point. And what is that? And it's just part, I always think about stuff like if you get to the next level, it's not easier. You just get new problems. And so what are those new problems if we're successful unlocking this specific use case? And that's pretty fun to think through. And there are lots of implications to Corey's point about it might change how we operate. We might have to think about newer, maybe hairier use cases. There might be different types of data. We might need infrastructure in place before we can get to that next level. And what is it going to take basically for us to get there?
I like arranging all your projects by pain and then kind of knocking them down. Biggest pain to smallest pain,
Yeah.
Well, it's 100%. Kind of a conversation we already have, right? Like how many times do we sit there and talk about like, we're at capacity, we need to hire, right?
Yeah.
It's the same conversation. It's just shifted a little bit. And so it's a natural, organic conversation happening inside of organizations today. We just aren't using the right words in some cases.
Mm-hmm. Corey, what's an example of some of the concerns and questions your board has had for AI that you thought were maybe really insightful and really useful? And then maybe do you have any sort of examples of questions that are maybe the wrong question to ask or kind of a question that indicates maybe we have a fundamental misunderstanding of the problem or something?
Yeah, the biggest questions we get is around security and hallucination, right? So,
okay. Yeah, specifically.
Yes. Are we going to have customer information or bank information compromised, or are we going to make decisions that are wrong? Right. That's the two main questions we get.
Scary questions.
Absolutely. And when I hear those questions, it usually indicates to me we didn't explain it correctly. And the reason why, and what I would recommend to every single person listening that's trying to talk to the board or figure out how they're going to talk to their board about this stuff, don't lead with demos. Don't lead with the tech.
Nice.
Don't show them the AI. Lead with the business justification and the guardrails. Talk about the business you're changing and talk about the guardrails and almost speak nothing about the tech, except for we're going to be using this here and it's going to cost this amount of money. You wrap up with that, right? Don't even lead with that. Start with the business change and the guardrails first. That usually solves for it, because if you don't and you start getting those questions, you know that you didn't explain this well.
Yeah.
No, it's such a good point. I just took a mental note because my board meetings are coming up and I had a 20-minute demo section and I'm going to strip that one out. Because you're right. It's about the business you're changing, not how the product works. It's a great reminder.
Alex, what are some questions you think are really good for boards to ask? And what are some questions that, or tips or that maybe indicate the question of a misunderstanding or the question is not very useful?
Yeah. I think a question that bank sort of leaders in lending and credit ask me constantly is they say, hey, the board is really excited about us using AI. Can you help me with that? And so I think not your board, Corey, necessarily, but across the ecosystem, I'm noticing the board said that we should use AI type,
that's how it's being communicated.
Urgency.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so what, Corey, how would you, in the hypothetical scenario where your board was giving you that type of pressure, how would you manage that in their shoes? And what do you wish more boards understood about what AI can and can't do in that conversation?
Yeah, the first thing I'm doing if I'm getting the pressure from my board or anyone, right, to go invest more in AI or whatever, is I'm taking that back to my internal team and saying, okay, well, hang on a second. What is the strategic focus of the organization? And how are we building this company over the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 years, whatever? And then I'm coming back to my board or the person who asked that question, and I'm putting the pieces together for them. I'm mapping that out in a roadmap that explains how we're going to leverage these things and why, with some intentionality, right? Because look, we can take that pressure and just go sign up for the next LLM. We'll go, get Anthropic finance or whatever you want to do. And that's fine. You're going to check that box today, but you're going to probably open Pandora's box tomorrow if we're not careful. And so for me, it's just, again, taking it back down to the business level and bring it back with a justification of why we want to build the bank a certain way, and then plug the pieces in. That's where I would start.
So after you get your yes, go for it from the board, obviously, I think the real question is how much is this going to cost? So how can you talk a little bit about the role that the board plays in budgeting for your projects, and then kind of both like the time, the money, and then the return on investment, right? Like I think the 1 to 3 days is probably a really important phrase to keep repeating over and over again.
Yes.
But can we talk a little bit about that relationship between that with the money and then the ROI?
Weirdly, and I've done this my whole career, right, is I go to the board, ask for money for budgets and everything like that. But I've never had a board ever. This may be happening. I'm sure it is. And I've talked to people that say it does. I've never had a board tell me how to spend my money.
Okay.
We have a team of people inside the company that tell us how to spend our money. And then it's my job as the technologist, right, to be able to fit the tech into a return on investment for the bank.
Yeah.
Right. But all this comes down to like business strategy and stuff. Like I just had Leo Tepedino, who's our director of treasury management. He brought a really cool tool, right, for us to use. And he wants to go sign this contract with this fintech company. I told Leo the other day, I said, cool. Let's build a business plan around this. This is like a new business line, a new way to go do this. We need to create a pro forma. We need to do all these other things. And so if you're doing the right work internally and your senior management team is doing the right work internally to build that level of thought into everything that we invest in or we move forward with, the board's not going to have as many questions about that stuff because you should be leading with that. Like, here's information, here's what you did. And then they're just poking holes like, hey, are we sure this is really going to be the identifiable market? That's the questions you want to get. You don't want them saying, I don't think 2 million's
right.
the right number. Maybe we can do it for $500,000, right?
You're like, I love the argument. Thank you so much for the rationale. But is there just any way that's less money than what you've quoted us at? And you're like, that's not how anything works in this economy. I wish.
No. No.
Alex, what kind of conversations or advice do you give to executives speaking to their boards about money tied to technology costs? And like, I know that tokens is becoming a really big thing right now. So I don't know if you want to throw in any commentary about that either.
Yeah, so I fully echo what Corey said. Like to give you an example, when I go and I work with the executive team at a bank around implementing Parlay, because I know there's numbers called, we end up talking about the ROI tenets that this is going to bring. So there's always an efficiency play and there's always a growth play. The question will be, what is the bank's current situation and which one of those two things takes precedence? So we've had some banks where like efficiency ratios are very much the focus, and we are trying to make it so that the humans in the bank can do way more because there was a lot of overhiring and now we need to kind of calibrate. But usually it comes back to growth. Can we, if we empower these human beings with tech, can we go do 3x more? Can we unlock capacity by 25%? And if things are faster, there's usually a flow down as well for like cost of capital. Faster fee and interest income. There's even some like, okay, great, you can sell it on the secondary market faster, right? If that's the strategy for the bank. And so no one has ever been like, I love this tech. It's the Maserati of agentic lending. We're buying it for that reason. They've said, great, I have a strategic objective.
Yeah.
You just showed me a pathway to achieving that. We're going to meet each other in the middle on like, what is that plan and how are we going to get there? But it's got to be tied to that. But Corey, I have a question for you on this one because I think I'm seeing a ton of lots of LinkedIn posts about, hey, I gave everyone an instance and then our AI bill ended up being $100,000 more than we thought it would be because everyone burned way too hot. Like, how do you think about that stuff? If you were giving advice to a bank that's worried about token cost, spend, usage, because you can run into those quickly if you put limits that are too low. Like, how on earth does a bank get about thinking through those considerations?
I think if you're running into that problem, you didn't really think about your problems deeply enough, right? That is a you fault. That is a you problem.
Yeah.
No, but seriously,
So
like
true.
if we just went and licensed something and said go, and then the token bill comes back and it's not what we expected, we didn't plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way we were supposed to. And so what I would say is sit down with your CFO, sit down with your business line leaders that you want to give these tools to, and understand what we're trying to achieve. And then we should have some sort of understanding, or at least basis, for what the volume's going to be. And then you look at that bill, and that can decide your LLM model that you might use, not just for expertise, but cost, right? And some of these things are factored in here. But just to sit there and just roll something out or pick an LLM because everyone else says it's cool is insane to me. And that's what's so frustrating. To be honest with you, sometimes it's hard for me to get on LinkedIn now because
I'm with you.
It's not a conversation anymore. It's a pitch deck. It's a bunch of people trying to peacock at it, and they're just repeating everything else, and it drives me insane.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think on that point as well, like, one, you did not plan enough. I agree with you on that. Two, I think, and some of this will get better, we're just a bit early, is everyone got very excited about what AI can do, the various LLM models that are available, and then they just threw, we took a giant sledgehammer to a pretty small nail. And I think what's going to happen, I see this a little bit on the vendor side, so I'm like pointing at myself, or generally my cohort of other vendor friends, is because AI can solve stuff almost automatically now, we tend to just throw the book at it. But that can make processes way more expensive than they were if you just had a deterministic system to handle it. And so I think what will smooth out over time is everyone, banks, vendors, the interplay will get better at the harness, the tool calls, the skills that an agent can pull that make it much cheaper to execute a task than it is today, where you're like, oh, well, I dropped 25 tax returns into the system and it also spread everything. Well, that's great. Our system does that too, but yours cost 100x what ours did because we have a tool call system and we have a deterministic backend and there's OCR plus a pipeline that leverages AI to make it so that cost per transaction is not outrageous, because that, if you're a high volume bank, and this could be in lending or anything else, like suddenly your economics look a bit different if you're not kind of thoughtful about that unit economic piece.
No, 100%. I had a buddy the other day. We were on an advisory call for a fintech, and afterwards he calls me. He's like, "Hey, I was thinking about this." He said, "We always talk about a person in the loop, right? With AI, put a person in the loop, person in the loop." He's like, "I think that's wrong." So I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I think it should be AI in the loop." And I said, "Okay, are you just moving words, or are we really talking about something?" And then he humbled me because he explained it, and I was like, "I'm such an idiot." He was saying, "Well, when we put a human in the loop, what we're assuming is AI is doing everything, and the human only has to inject whenever it absolutely has to." He said, "We should be looking at what are our humans doing that they need to do, and then you loop in AI where it can help." And he was like, "I know it's
context engineering."
Yeah, he's like, "It's just a change of words." He's like, "But I think it's the conversation we should be having." And he's spot on with that assessment. Because then I jump on a pitch call from another fintech who I've known for decades and I have a really close relationship with, that they're trying to launch this AI agent and online banking for consumers. And really cool tool. I loved it.
Yeah.
The last question I had for him was, "Are you paying for the calls or am I paying for the calls? Like, is it a per user cost or is it a per call cost?" And he was like, "That's the conversation we have." And I said, "Well, when you have that one, come talk to me."
When you've got the answer to this question and it's one word, then we can talk. In my time covering tech, especially at the community bank level, one of the things that I feel like had been kind of missing is like, tech is the tool, and what we really need to talk about is the process and the people who use it. And that often felt like that's a much hard, and that's a significantly harder conversation when you're a financial journalist to have. I'm sure consultants are having it. And I I think one of the things that will be interesting is that because of the excitement and the way AI was like agentic AI, the LLMs were priced. And then now everyone is now talking a lot more about cost, which is then, as we see here, we're having a conversation about process and how to like address a problem or how to apply a tool or think about the system, the right system or the most cost-effective system. You don't need the Maserati. We're having a conversation that I have really, really struggled to have in a lot of other situations involving tech. And it's kind of having really, and it's almost like, again, to the point that like constraint is going to generate the creativity. Like we're all finally able to talk a little bit better about we need better processes because we very clearly know how much this thing can cost us and we know how much we can get out of it. But if costs exceed efficiency gains or productivity gains, we just shouldn't use the tool. It's right. Like, and I think that's something I'm kind of excited about because I was never really able to kind of get the whole conversation of like your process is broken and needs to be fixed. And you need to think about that before you think about the tool itself.
I think that's such a great conversation to have. And I think you're thinking about it so perfectly. And I think to the fact that this is a hard conversation points to the problem that banking has had with technology from the very beginning is that it is complex, right? To understand how we, the spending and the applications and how do we really think about putting this into the business plan. And so what it's led to is banks don't do anything. No. Like they don't build tech, they don't invest into the tech, they don't really kind of go part of the design process. And so what we've done, right, is we've allowed these major core providers, we've allowed these large fintech companies and the big banks to build and own every single piece of tech, every single payment rail that we have in banking today. And then we're complaining now about the economics.
Right.
And so
didn't work out for us, I guess.
No. And so I think we're at a really cool point, both with, all of the new payment stuff that's coming down the line. So we're talking about tokenized deposits, stable coin, and all this other stuff. And then AI, it's like having this really nice, perfect intersection point where we're about to have a major shift. And I'm trying to scream as loud as I can to every single community banker and regional banker out there. We're not going to have another moment like this for decades.
No.
We need to be at the table designing and creating ownership in these technologies and capabilities, or we're just going to let everyone control the economics again. And a lot of us are not going to do very well with it. So I think you're thinking about it so perfectly because if we do think about it like that, I think we can start to change some of this stuff as we move forward.
Yeah. Alex?
I wish I could mic drop for you there, Corey, because it is true. I really think that if banks seize the moment, really, there is an opportunity to build internally and in collaboration with vendors that next generation stack. Like I often think that community banks are having their Estonia moment. Like Estonia had all of their infrastructure raised.
I was like, this is not a reference back in the day.
Okay. So they basically had all of that infra destroyed by a really bad cyber attack. And then they said, you know what, we're going to build it from scratch and we're going to thrive by virtue of the fact that we basically have a blank slate. And now they are one of the leading countries in digital identities because they said, well, this was tough, but we can rebuild. And then they did. And I think that instead of having to rely on legacy systems and stuff, like I feel that leading bankers, and Corey, you're absolutely one of them, are saying, wait a second, we've got the tools now to build things the way we want them and to leapfrog this generation of tech that we've relied on to kind of build what we need to thrive. And I think it's super exciting.
Absolutely. And then strategically find where you buy, right? Versus build. And where you can have a seat at the table and have a conversation. That's where, and I'll plug, Parlay one more time here. That's where you guys do such an amazing job is you come sit down and you ask the questions needed and then design the product around us. And that is super helpful. That's not the conversation we've typically had in the past. I've had so many eye-opening moments as a de novo bank, and I'm going to throw out a name. So like Zelle, I'm going to say, Zelle is an example. Early warning systems. When I first launched the bank, every one of my customers asked for Zelle, so I put in a request to get Zelle. as a new chartered bank. I receive the email if and when they decide to accept my project, they'll let me know. And so then I applied through our core provider, Nimbus. And it's like maybe the core provider will have it because they have more banks. It's just not just be as a $0 asset bank trying to grow. Receive the same email. If and when we decide to accept the project, we'll let you know. So then I applied through Alloy Labs Alliance, which we're part of a consortium of. And so we're looking at trying to launch Chuck and some of these other things, which is now Rebolt. Really cool service. Same response, if and when. And I'm like, this is insane. And it just points to the problem that we don't control it. We don't have any ownership in it. So therefore, we either have to pay to play, and in some cases, we can't even pay to play. Which is concerning to me. And so, I think this is the most important conversation we could have around AI or any technology is who's owning it, how are we designing it, and how are we using it inside of our companies thoughtfully so we control it.
Well, with that, Alex, do you want to give me my homework for the week?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So, Corey, every episode we do a homework for Kiah, and it can be in ChatGPT or OpenAI. I think one that I've really enjoyed the last couple weeks has been building skills. So inside Claude, you can go ahead and build a skill for yourself. It's fun for me in my space because SBA lenders and small business lenders have certain skills that are kind of unique to that universe, and you can call it. And so one recent, very general non-SBA one that I've done is I wrote a skill up called No AI Speak, because it infuriates me so much to read a post that has clearly been written with AI that I have an editor to strip out all of the repetition or kind of common cues and tells. So my homework to you this week would be to build a skill in Claude that relates to some of the work that you do.
Okay. I mean, this second brain, we're using it. This is the first time I'm using it, and I'm realizing it's funny because I don't think I told you this. To do my second brain, and I'm really sorry. This is probably the fifth time we've mentioned
Matt
LinkedIn.
Michaelis told Kiah that she should build herself a second brain, and that was his homework. Still I
had to download a Git, which I don't know what that is. So there was that whole thing. And then I found a prompt on LinkedIn about how to build a second brain from someone who works at Mercury. And I don't know what it says about me, but the first phase of it was to interview me, and it felt like therapy intake. Or a career coach that was like, what are you struggling with? What are your fears at work? What kind of feedback do you get from your managers? And I was like, I can't even, I have a mental block against telling an AI things that I'm bad at. And then we had to integrate all my, what I really wanted was to put all of my archived work in it so it can remember what I've written, because I can't remember what I've written, remember who I've spoken to. I wanted it to, every time I start a new newsletter, I want it to, create a research brief for me based on recent news items and with links. So I can just, anything that gets starting a newsletter faster is, really good for me, right? That hump of, I need to talk to these people. I need to search the entire internet for all the news that could be related. So this is the first week that I'm using it.
Yeah, you could create a project for all of your writing and put all your legacy writing in there, and then have it remember preferences, methods that you like to kind of cover stuff.
And then I just need to I need to overcome this hump so I can start writing faster. That's and I am trying to reduce. I told my second brain that I'm trying to get it to reduce the amount of time it takes me to write a newsletter by 1 day, so that I could, in the future, I could potentially add more newsletters, right? That's what I'm trying to do, is increase my capacity. I don't know if you've ever seen Alex. Alex publishes 3 newsletters a week. And so
Alex Johnson,
I need to other Alex. I need to,
not me.
I need to make sure that I can get myself to
keep
kind of
up
that
with
level. So, Well,
Corey,
I don't want to
what do you recommend? You use a bunch of skills and tools.
No, I love the skills thing. So one of the things I started playing with the other day was, designing code, right? So we've been designing code in concept for this sub entity. And I started thinking, I was like, there's such a bias to the code that's getting written. And based off of what I've said and what I've wanted, what I've prompted, and what the AI agent has built already, that I started creating these other skills, almost these other agents to be like sanity testers and like the different like, and so you have these
agents.
Yeah, so basically I have these Anthropic skills that are literally looking at Anthropic and asking why it did what it did. And I thought that was really cool. And then it just started making me think all different ways of how I can kind of use that in my personal life. So to what you're saying, like I'm terrible at like going out and writing or doing anything like that. And so I've did the same thing. I've been just dumping every, podcast I've done, every panel I've sat on, every script I've ever had to read in front of the public, and just said, "Hey, tell me what I've been saying here." And
that's a second brain. Yeah. If you need this prompt, I got you, Corey. Because
I'm going to call you
all weekend, man. I was hitting allow once. So
I need a second and a third brain, so I'm going to call you.
Me too.
Well, Corey, Alex, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I think it's so important, especially to keep this in mind, who the stakeholders are. How can we go about it? How can we bring people along and bring the whole bank along too? And I think at a lot of banks, if the board says no, it just doesn't get done. So I think, how can we have better conversations is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, just stop asking your board yes or no questions and give them real strategy, and you won't have that problem.
Mic drop. Nice one, Corey. Amazing. I cannot follow that. I think that's it. Yeah.
All right, we'll end it there. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, everyone.